You're nothing without this family name, my dad told me after cutting me out of the business. I left quietly. Now I own the company he tried to kill, and his keycard doesn't work. I'm Jake, 32, male, and the day my dad told me I was nothing without this family name, something in me just shut off. It was like someone flipped a breaker inside my chest. No yelling, no slamming doors, just silence. I'd spent 12 years in our family construction company, his company, technically, busting my ass to modernize everything. Digital systems, updated equipment, safety compliance, new contracts. I turned that rusted legacy into a real business. But in my dad's eyes, Richard, 61, male, I was still the kid tagging along at job sites. The boy who should have been grateful just to have the family logo stitched on his jacket. When he called me into his office that morning, I thought it was about a new bid we'd won. The desk was covered in manila folders, old contracts, a bottle of bourbon he kept for celebrations. He didn't even look up when he said, "I've decided to restructure." My name wasn't on the new list. I laughed at first. I thought he was joking. But then he slid a termination letter across the table. "You've been acting like this company's yours, Jake. It's not, it's mine. And I don't trust you with it anymore." I remember staring at the framed photo behind him, me at 10 years old in a hard hat sitting on his shoulders while he smiled like I was the world. That photo still hangs in that office, or it used to. When I asked why, he finally looked up, eyes cold and small. "You're nothing without this family name. You only got where you are because of me." There it was, the truth I'd been pretending not to hear for years. I didn't argue, didn't defend myself, just nodded, slid the termination letter back and said, "You're right. The name got me here. I'll take it from here." He smirked like I was some petulant kid mouthing off. But when I walked out, I didn't slam the door. I walked through that building, the one I'd helped build from concrete to glass, and said nothing. A week later, he changed the locks. A month after that, I found out he'd frozen the accounts in my name, blacklisted me with vendors, and told clients I'd been fired for incompetence. That's when the silence broke. The first few weeks after getting fired were strange, like walking through the wreckage of a house that used to feel safe. Every phone call was a reminder that my name, our name, was poisoned now. Clients I'd personally brought in stopped returning calls. Suppliers who used to greet me like a friend suddenly had scheduling conflicts. And every rumor somehow circled back to the same source, Richard. My dad didn't just fire me, he erased me. He told people I'd been stealing, that I'd run up company expenses for personal projects. Total lies. But he knew what he was doing. In construction, reputation is everything. Once people think you're shady, you're radioactive. The final straw was when my buddy Chris, 35, male, our lead project manager and one of the few people who actually respected me, called to warn me what was happening. "Jake, he's not just cutting you out," he said quietly. "He's rewriting history. He told the board you nearly tanked the Peterson contract. You saved that deal, man." I remember sitting in my apartment that night, staring at the cracked drywall and the boxes I hadn't unpacked. My phone buzzed with one of those automated overdraft alerts. My savings were almost gone. My dad had locked me out of every shared account, including the one Mom had set up for me before she died. He knew what that money meant. It was all I had left of her. That's when I lost it. I threw my glass at the wall so hard it exploded into glittering shrapnel. I kicked a chair across the kitchen. Then I just collapsed on the floor. The worst part? He'd probably be proud of that moment. "Can't handle pressure," he'd say. "Too emotional." He used to sneer at me for that, said I was more like Mom than him. And he didn't mean it as a compliment. But that night, something in me hardened. I stopped trying to prove anything to him. I stopped begging for scraps of approval. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a bar nursing a beer when I ran into an old contact. Emma, 30, female, an architect I'd worked with on several big projects before Dad shoved me out. She'd heard what happened. "He's burning bridges left and right," she said. "You know half the subcontractors won't touch him anymore, right? He's impossible to work with." That was the moment the idea hit me. If my dad wanted to destroy everything I built under his name, then maybe it was time to build something new. Something that didn't need him. And for the first time in months, I smiled. Starting over sounds noble until you're eating ramen for dinner and trying to figure out how to afford your next tank of gas. The idea had been clear in my head. Build something better, something that wasn't chained to my dad's toxic ego. But reality doesn't care about poetic revenge arcs. My credit was tanked, my reputation was shot, and my apartment smelled like drywall dust and hopelessness. Emma, God bless her, didn't just give me pep talks. She gave me leads. "There's this small developer I know," she said one afternoon, sliding her phone across the cafe table. "They're trying to rehab old industrial properties on the east side. You've got the experience. You just need to convince them you're not radioactive." It wasn't easy. The first meeting, I could feel them dancing around the rumors my dad had spread. But I brought blueprints, data, cost projections, every scrap of proof that I actually knew what the hell I was doing. It wasn't enough to erase my last name, but it was enough to start chipping away at it. Within 6 months, I had my own crew again. 5 guys, a rented truck, and a borrowed trailer full of tools. We called ourselves Holloway Buildworks, my mom's maiden name. Every paycheck went straight back into the business. I didn't sleep much, but I didn't need to. I had something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. And that's when my dad started to notice. He showed up to one of our job sites. No warning, no invitation, just his black Escalade pulling up in a cloud of dust. I was in a hard hat, covered in plaster dust, giving instructions to my guys when I heard his voice. "Jake!" The sound froze me mid-sentence. He was standing there, arms crossed in his perfect tailored jacket, like he was slumming it in the third world. "So this is what you've been doing?" he said. "Playing construction worker?" The crew went silent. I wiped my hands on my jeans. "This is my company." He laughed, a short, sharp bark. "Your company? You mean the one you're stealing my clients for?" He was red-faced now, pacing. His voice rose loud enough for half the site to hear. "You think you can build something without the Holloway name? Without me? You're nothing, Jake. You'll always be nothing without this family." And then, like it was some sick reflex, he grabbed one of the blueprints off the table and ripped it clean in half. That's when Chris stepped in. He'd been silent up till then, just watching. "Sir," he said quietly, "you should leave." Richard looked around, at my crew, at the building going up behind us, and I saw it in his face for the first time. Fear. The realization that I might actually make it without him. He shoved the torn blueprint at my chest and hissed, "You'll regret this," before storming off to his car. The next morning, the bank called. Our credit line had been flagged for verification. He wasn't done. The verification hold was my dad's opening shot in a full-blown war. Within a week, the loan officer who had helped me secure startup capital suddenly stopped returning my emails. 2 of my suppliers backed out of agreements they'd already signed. And one morning, I came to the site to find someone had keyed thief into the side of my pickup. It didn't take a detective to figure out who was behind it. Richard wasn't subtle. He was vindictive. He knew exactly how to cut deep, not through lawsuits or violence, but through credibility. He'd built an empire on his reputation. Now he was using mine as the sacrificial lamb to keep his own from bleeding out. But here's the thing about people like him. They underestimate how much damage they've already done. I'd spent my whole life studying that man. I knew how he operated, how he manipulated, how he lied. He taught me every dirty trick in the book, and I was finally ready to use them better. Emma was furious when she heard what he'd done. "He's trying to bury you alive," she said. "I know," I replied, "so I'll just start digging in the other direction." That's when the plan began to take shape. It wasn't revenge yet, not fully, but it was the seed of it. I went after every burned bridge he'd ever left smoldering. Old subcontractors, vendors he'd stiffed, clients who'd sworn they'd never work with him again. I sat in their offices, face to face, and told them the truth. That Richard Holloway's company was rotting from the inside, that he treated people like tools, that the son he'd called nothing was building something real, and would actually pay them what they were owed. It worked, slowly, quietly. Word spread that Holloway Buildworks was the company that did things right. The crews worked weekends. Emma pulled all-nighters revising plans. Chris quit my dad's firm after Richard accused him of spying for the enemy and joined me full-time. For a while, it felt like we were finally outrunning the shadow. Then came the fire. I'll never forget the smell, acrid, chemical, and unmistakable. I got the call at 2 a.m. Our equipment trailer had gone up in flames. Everything, tools, materials, documents, gone. The fire inspector said it was likely electrical, but I knew better. Richard's hands never got dirty. He had guys for that. I stood there in the dark parking lot watching the last of my company's gear melt into twisted metal, and something inside me clicked. He wanted a war. Fine. He'd just forgotten who taught me how to fight. Update: wow. I didn't expect this story to blow up like it did. I read every single comment. Yeah, even the wild ones. To the people telling me to lawyer up and go scorched earth, trust me, that thought crossed my mind around 2 a.m. while watching the fire trucks hose down what was left of my trailer. But here's the thing. Some of you nailed it in the comments. My dad doesn't fight with fists or lawsuits. He fights for control. He wanted me to lose it publicly to feed the narrative he's been spinning for years, that I'm emotional, impulsive, unfit to lead. So instead, I went quiet again. Calm. Dangerous calm. I took your advice, though. I did get a lawyer. A real one, not the cheap guy who helped with the business registration. Her name's Ava, 38, female, and she's got the kind of energy that makes even arrogant men sit up straight. She took one look at the fire report, the vandalism photos, the credit hold paperwork, and said, "He's sloppy. He's covering tracks that don't exist yet." Meanwhile, Chris and Emma refused to let me spiral. Chris literally showed up at my apartment the next morning with breakfast tacos and a stack of project files. "Fire didn't burn your brain, boss," he said. "We'll rebuild." And we did. Fast. Within a week, Emma secured new contracts with 2 developers who'd worked with my dad years ago but swore they'd never deal with him again. They were eager to jump ship once they heard I was the alternative. The timing was poetic. Richard had just lost his biggest client after they found out he'd been cutting corners on safety inspections. I didn't leak that info, but someone did. Here's where it gets interesting. A few nights ago, I got a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won something, Jake? You're a child playing with matches." No signature, no name, but I'd know that rhythm anywhere. Richard doesn't just type, he bites his words. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded it to Ava. She called me 10 minutes later. "Good," she said. "Keep everything. He's digging his own grave." So that's where we're at. My dad's unraveling. Holloway Construction is bleeding contracts. And me? Holloway Buildworks just signed a deal that's going to double our size by year's end. Funny thing, I didn't have to destroy him. He's doing that all by himself. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't planning one final move. Not out of anger, out of symmetry. He took everything from me once. Now, I'm going to take back what was always mine. The deal that changed everything started with a single phone call. Emma burst into my office, well, the converted shipping container we were using as one, and said, "Jake, you're going to want to take this." She handed me her phone, eyes wide. On the other end was Mark Reynolds, 52, male, the regional director of Stonebrook Developments, one of the biggest commercial real estate firms in the state. Turns out Stonebrook had been working with my dad's company for nearly 2 decades. Big contracts. Multi-million-dollar builds. But recently, deadlines had slipped, budgets had ballooned, and word had spread about irregularities in their safety reports. Mark didn't mince words. "Richard's losing his grip," he said flatly. "We're looking for someone who can finish what he can't." That was the moment everything clicked into place. We met at a downtown hotel bar that night. Mark brought binders, blueprints, contracts, timelines. He was tired of excuses, tired of Richard's temper tantrums, and desperate for reliability. Holloway Construction had half-finished 3 projects. If I could step in and complete them under my own company's name, the contracts and all future work would be mine. It wasn't just a lifeline. It was poetic justice. The only problem, those projects belonged to my dad's company. Taking them would mean legally outmaneuvering him, not just outperforming him. So Ava got involved. For 2 straight weeks, she tore through documents, finding every clause Richard had ignored, every breach he'd conveniently forgotten to disclose. And then she smiled. "He's cooked," she said. "He violated his own terms so badly I can walk right through his front door and take his lunch money." When the papers were filed, Richard didn't call. He showed up. It was raining that night, the kind that soaks through your jacket no matter what. I was in the workshop going over invoices when I heard the door slam open. He stood there, drenched, eyes bloodshot, breathing hard like he'd sprinted from his car. "You think you're clever?" he spat. "You think you can steal my contracts?" I didn't look up. "You broke them, Dad. I just picked up the pieces." He grabbed the nearest thing, a level from the workbench, and slammed it across the table so hard it cracked the wood. "You've ruined this family," he screamed. "You've turned everyone against me. You're nothing but a traitor." My voice shook, but I met his eyes. "You turned us against you. You just didn't notice until now." For a moment, he didn't move. His jaw clenched, his hands trembled, and I swear I saw tears mix with the rain on his face. Then he said it again, quieter this time. "You're nothing, Jake. You'll always be nothing." He left with his headlights off, tires screaming through puddles. I stood there in the silence, staring at the cracked table, the rain leaking through the doorway, and realized this wasn't just about business anymore. This was about identity, about reclaiming everything he'd stolen, my work, my name, my peace. And the next morning, the news broke. Stonebrook Developments had officially terminated all contracts with Holloway Construction. Every single one of them was being reassigned. To me. The morning the news hit felt almost unreal. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts, calls, emails. Half congratulations, half disbelief. Stonebrook terminates Holloway construction contracts, awards completion rights to Holloway Buildworks. The headline alone felt like a cosmic joke. My dad had spent decades building that name, and now it was being buried under mine. I thought he'd go quiet after that. I should have known better. Richard didn't do quiet. He did spectacle. By noon, he was on site at one of the Stonebrook projects, screaming at anyone in earshot that he'd sue the company, sue me, sue God if he had to. I wasn't there at first. I heard it from Chris, who called with a half laugh, half warning. "He's losing it, Jake. Security's trying to get him off the lot, but he's threatening to shut the whole site down." When I got there, he was red-faced, pacing in the mud, yelling about family betrayal and corporate theft. Cameras were out, phones, local news crews. Stonebrook's PR department must have tipped them off, hoping to show how they were handling the chaos. When Richard saw me, his voice dropped into something worse than shouting. "You did this." I stood a few feet away, rain dripping off my jacket, people watching from the edges like it was theater. "You did this to yourself, Dad. I just stopped cleaning up after you." He lunged forward, shoving at my chest hard enough that I stumbled back a step. Security moved in immediately, but I waved them off. I wanted him to see me standing there, not flinching. "You're not my son," he hissed. "You're a vulture." "And you're not my mentor," I said. "You're a warning." He froze then, jaw tight, trembling like he might break right there in front of everyone. Then he actually spat, at the ground near my boots, turned, and stormed off to his truck. That clip hit social media within hours, and by nightfall, it was everywhere. Emma showed me on her phone. The video had over 200,000 views. The top comment said, "Imagine telling your son he's nothing, then watching him steal your empire." For the first time, the world saw who Richard Holloway really was. Not a visionary businessman, just a bitter man who'd built his castle on fear. But victory didn't feel as sweet as I thought it would. I couldn't shake the image of him standing in the rain, shaking, undone. Then the call came. Late, just past midnight. Ava's voice on the line. "Jake, your father's company filed for bankruptcy protection tonight. He's claiming sabotage." I sat there, staring into the dark, phone pressed to my ear. I didn't say it out loud, but part of me already knew. Richard wasn't done. Men like him don't fade quietly. They explode on the way down. Update 2. I didn't plan on posting again this soon, but holy hell. Things escalated faster than anyone expected. First off, thank you to everyone who's been following this mess and sending messages. I've read the comments, the DMs, even the plot twist. "Your dad's gonna fake a heart attack" theories. You weren't far off. Because that man actually tried to stage his downfall like a tragic movie. After the bankruptcy filing, everything spiraled. The local business journal ran an article titled, "Holloway Dynasty Collapses Amid Family Feud." They used a side-by-side photo of me and Richard, him in one of his old press headshots. Me at a recent job site in a hard hat, Two Holloways, two completely different worlds. The comments under that article? Brutal. People who'd worked with him for years finally had the courage to speak up. Stories about unpaid invoices, bullying, falsified reports. It was like watching a dam burst. But instead of going silent, Richard went nuclear. 3 nights ago, he showed up at my office after hours. I was alone, going over payroll when I heard the alarm chime at the door. I looked up, and there he was. Disheveled, reeking of whiskey. His tie half undone. "You stole my life," he slurred. "You took everything I built." "Dad, you built it on lies," I said quietly. "You burned everyone who ever tried to help you." He staggered forward, knocking a stack of invoices to the ground. "I made you, Jake. You think you're some self-made man? You're standing on my bones." When I reached for my phone, he lunged, grabbed it out of my hand and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall. For a second, I thought he was going to hit me. His face was red, veins bulging in his neck, hands shaking. But instead, he did something worse. He started to cry. Loud, broken sobs that didn't sound real. He dropped to his knees and said, "Please, please give it back. I don't know who I am without this." And I swear for one stupid second I felt sorry for him. The man who'd spent his life making me feel like dirt. But then I looked around at my office, our plans on the wall, the new logo on the window, and realized this was who I was without him. "I can't help you," I said. "Not anymore." He left without another word, just the sound of his shoes scraping the concrete. The next morning, I had the locks changed. Today, I got a call from building security at his old office. My old office now, technically. Richard had shown up with his old keycard, tried to swipe in, and when it didn't work, he lost it. Threw his briefcase at the door, started pounding the glass, screaming that it was all his. They had to escort him off the property. And when he passed the security desk, they said he turned around one last time and said, "He's nothing without me." But that's the thing. He's wrong. For the first time in my entire life, I finally am. Nothing without him. And that's exactly what makes me free. For a while, it felt like the storm had finally passed. After the keycard incident, Richard went radio silent. No calls, no emails, no late-night visits, just quiet. Eerie, unnatural quiet. I should have known it was the kind that comes right before the next explosion. Meanwhile, Holloway Buildworks was thriving. The Stonebrook projects were ahead of schedule, clients were happy, and our team had doubled in size. For the first time since I could remember, my days didn't revolve around managing someone else's chaos. I was leading something that actually worked. But success has a funny way of drawing out ghosts. It started small, calls from unfamiliar numbers that hung up the moment I answered. My truck's side mirror mysteriously smashed in the company parking lot. Then Emma's tires got slashed outside her apartment. She tried to brush it off, but I saw her hands shaking when she told me. I didn't want to accuse him outright. Hell, I didn't want to believe he was capable of something like that, but my gut said otherwise. Ava did too. "He's unraveling, Jake," she said over the phone. "When a man like your father loses everything, he'll either disappear or destroy anything that reminds him of what he lost." And apparently, that was me. 2 weeks later, Chris called just after dawn. "You're going to want to come down to the old Holloway construction site," his voice was tight, "and bring your lawyer." When I got there, my stomach dropped. The place looked like a crime scene. Every pane of glass in the front office shattered. Windows spiderwebbed with cracks. Red spray paint all over the facade. Thief, liar, fake Holloway. Someone had ripped the bronze nameplate off the wall, the one that used to say Richard Holloway and Son Construction, and smashed it into pieces across the sidewalk. The cops took statements, dusted for prints, the whole routine. But I didn't need an investigation. I recognized the handwriting. My dad's R's always curled backward, like a loop that never closed. When they finally cleared the scene, I stood there for a long time staring at what was left of that building. It used to represent everything I wanted to become. Now it was just proof of what I'd escaped. Later that night, I got an email. No name, just a video file. It was security footage from earlier that morning. Richard, disheveled, wild-eyed, smashing the sign with a crowbar. Ava's voice echoed in my head. He'll either disappear or destroy anything that reminds him of what he lost. I watched him in silence. The man who'd built me and broken me in the same breath. The man who once said I'd be nothing without his name, now reduced to a vandal in the ruins of his own empire. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger, just something colder. Pity. The day it finally ended didn't feel cinematic. No grand confrontation, no courtroom showdown, just a quiet morning that smelled like coffee and wet concrete. Ordinary, almost boring. It started with a call from Ava. Her tone was different this time, softer. "Jake, they found him," she said. For a second, I didn't understand. "Found who?" I asked, though I already knew. Richard. He'd been living in a rundown motel on the outskirts of town for weeks. Unpaid bills, empty whiskey bottles, eviction notices piling up. When management finally went to clear the room, they found him slumped against the headboard, alive but barely. Severe dehydration, liver failure, the whole list. The hospital called me as his emergency contact. Standing outside that hospital room felt like staring into a funhouse mirror. The man inside wasn't my father, not the version who'd filled every room with noise, who barked orders like scripture. He was small now, fragile, tubes and machines doing the work his pride never let anyone else do for him. The nurse asked if I wanted to see him. I almost said no, but curiosity, or maybe something like mercy, pulled me in. When he opened his eyes, they were foggy but still sharp enough to find me. "Jake," he croaked, the word dry and broken. "You came?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "I came." He looked around the sterile room, the machines beeping softly. They said, "You own the company now." "I do." He gave a weak laugh that turned into a cough. "Guess I was wrong about you." "You were," I said. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, barely audible, "All I ever wanted was to be remembered." I swallowed hard. "You will be." He nodded, almost peacefully. Then after a long pause, he whispered, "You're nothing without this family name." It wasn't venom this time, it was habit. His final line in a play he didn't know was over. He closed his eyes, and I left. 3 months later, Holloway Construction was officially dissolved. Holloway Buildworks bought the remaining assets, legally, cleanly. His company now existed only on paper, folded into mine. The first morning after the merger, I drove to the old office, the one that still bore the faint outline of the nameplate he'd destroyed. I parked, got out, and swiped my new access card. The door beeped open. Behind me, someone tried to swipe another card. A dull error tone echoed from the reader. I turned, half expecting to see him there, furious, pounding on the glass like before. But the door was empty, just sunlight cutting across the lobby floor. That was the last time I ever thought of Richard Holloway as my shadow. Now, when I walk through those halls, I don't hear his voice anymore. Just the hum of the lights, the echo of footsteps, and the quiet rhythm of a life I built myself. He was wrong in the end. I wasn't nothing without that family name. I was finally something because I let it die.